right back with another one. Just thinking about some things that it may sound a bit crazy or strange, or maybe some people may actually understand it, but a lot of times we talk about how when we're sleeping, that we're dreaming, and that when we're dreaming, there's just they're just your conscious thoughts manifesting themselves in pictures. Because when your eyes are closed, you can unconsciously, I guess, create these dreams or these events, or it conjures up feelings that you may have towards a person or a particular time in your past, or some significant moment that took place. And when you're asleep and you're thinking about these things, that they manifest themselves in pictures. And although I do think that that is true in some cases, I don't think that's true in all cases, because I think that unconsciously or subconsciously, you're accessing your true self. And because the body is in a still position, and there's no activity going on within the body, that allows your spiritual self, the actual you, to manifest itself. And then has to somehow make it so that you can remember it or understand it through the only time where your conscious and subconscious mind isn't both fighting for that position. When you sleep, your conscious mind is resting, so your subconscious mind is allowed to move, which is you, the true you, the spiritual being, the light being, whatever you want to call it, soul, whatever that is. But that's the thing that's operating in that state when you sleep. And when you're in that state, just like in this body, with attached to this brain, you have those memories of past conversations, past things that you did. You can remember when you went to the beach when you were a kid. You can remember the first time tasting hot dogs, the first time you had pancakes, or your first love, right? Those experiences, you remember those experiences, but the conscious self also remembers those experiences, but except those experiences are throughout time and space, right? We have as humans, we believe that we have this concept of death. We understand that, the concept of death, right? You were born, right? You die, and then you go to either heaven or hell. What we never actually understand about the self, the spiritual self, right? Because most Christians, most religious people, for the most part, believe that when you die, your soul goes somewhere. But I think the thing that's so fascinating is that the idea of being a spiritual being, right? Understanding what a spiritual being is and calling yourself a spiritual being is two different things. I think knowing that you're a spiritual being means you have access to information and knowledge that expands space and time. You're not just this version of yourself. You are every version of yourself that has ever existed throughout time, right? And I'm saying time because that's how we view things. But time it doesn't exist. It's not relevant. It is just a measurement, right? Sometimes it's right there in your face, right? Light years, when they talk about space, they say in light years. And then if you look at what light years are just distances between solar systems, star systems, galaxies, right? There's just a space between between those star systems. So it is just a measurement of distance. It's not really time, but it has light years, right? Light years, because it has to determine how long it would take from you to get from the point you are to the other point that you're targeting, right? So from your source to your destination. And to be a spiritual being is just light and energy, which means that if you house that same memory of all of the experiences that you have lived before you entered into this body, with the understanding that this body is no more than a vessel, like any other vessel, like any other car, any other plane, any other car, truck, whatever it is that you use as a mode of transportation to get you from point A to point B, in order for you to move about in different places, that's all it really is. It's just a vehicle. Your physical body is nothing more than a physical being. It's just a vessel. It requires you to be able to move about in this realm from point A to point B. Right? So once you have that understanding, you realize that the spiritual self is so much more older than this physical body. We attach our age to this body, but if your spiritual self could be millions of years old, billions of years old, and here's a little, what is it? What is the word I want to use? Here's a little fantasy for some. What if that spiritual self of yourself has lived not just this human life, but other lives of other beings that are similarly organic to the world that experience took place? We understand organic meaning something that is from that planet, right? From that planet. You are considered organic when you were born from this planet, birthed from this actual planet. That makes you an organic being. If you were not born of this planet, then you would be an inorganic being. And organic meaning something that was created by something other than the planet itself, right? By man or whatever it is, right? But to understand why something that's not from this planet, you'd have to at least expand the possibilities that we aren't the only organic beings that exist in the entire universe, right? With that would imply extraterrestrials, aliens, whatever you want to call these things, right? And we might view something that's inorganic, that's something that doesn't look like us, but that doesn't mean they're not organic to this planet. That just means they don't look like us. I mean, even amongst the human race, there are so many variations of the humans, right? You have tall, short, man, woman, black, white, straight hair, curly hair, long hair, short hair. I mean, there's so many variations of us that even amongst our race, we have different variations. So there's got to be other species that are also organic to this place. Now, I say that because I want to set a stage for you. Because what if your spiritual self has traveled galaxies, universes, and have ended up reincarnating in other places as another organic being, and having those experiences in those organic beings. And while you are sleeping, you are able to experience or remember those times when you were on other worlds, in other galaxies, in other star systems, living as another organic being. Well, then that changes things. It really changes things, because now you start to realize that some of your dreams may not just be what you remember when you were, your human self, but you might be remembering lives when you were human. Or maybe you're a human at a different time period. There have been stories where there have been kids who can remember situations or remember time periods in detail. So detailed that the only way they would have known these details is if they have lived during those times. And we brush them off, right? We call them thinking, we just completely ignore them altogether. But why lived a life if you don't take the time to observe all the things around you and dissect them for yourself and try to get an understanding of what it all means. To just sit back and say, that's just nothing, and then ignore it, which can be it could be a crucial piece in what we are, who you are. And I'm talking all of this to kind of set the stage, because I had, from a very young age, I've always dreamt. And up until recently, I was told by, my wife and my father-in-law that not everyone dreams. And I found that strange, because I can remember dreaming my entire life, always. Like, there was rarely a moment where I didn't dream. And sometimes when I didn't dream, I found solace in it, because the dreams were always so real, so vivid, some of them even scary, I might say. But over time, I changed that. And I've had some dreams that when I woke up, I said, wow, that felt so real. And now, at this point, where I am currently, I understand things so much differently. Some might not fully understand, some may not agree with these viewpoints or these things that I'm saying, but I just want you to have an open mind, right? I've had countless dreams that still kind of sit with me today that I never quite understood, but then they began to make sense. I've always felt displaced. I've always felt displaced. I've always felt like I don't belong here. And I don't want to get that confused with the idea that I'm suicidal and I want to take my own life, because that's not what we're saying. What I'm saying is, I felt like I don't belong on this planet. I don't feel like this is my home. I don't feel like I truly belong here. I feel like I'm in someone else's home. And I've always felt like that, even around those around me. I always seem to be different than everyone else. I act differently than everyone else, and I experience things differently than everyone else. My whole life, I've always had interactions with women, and they've always said the same thing: you're not like other men. And I've always had, oddly enough, weird interactions with people in general, where it felt like whenever people were around me, they felt uncomfortable around me, uneasy around me. And I was always never a person who cared for attention. So I always, even in a crowded room, I tend to want to stay away from the attention. And I've always been like that. But for whatever reason, people always seem to either be uncomfortable with me or extremely comfortable with me. So it was always those two extremes. And I never understood why, and it bothered me so much. And then when I finally met, two people in my life who became, they became my brothers, that I didn't feel so alone, because I had two people in the world that at least understood me and just accepted, the person that I was, which wasn't no different from everyone else, but they didn't seem to be bothered by me very much. But I realized that at some point a few years ago, this is fast forwarding to recently, the last 3 or 4 years, I went through some really big changes in my life, and those changes in my life were the precursor to things that are to come. And I remember talking to my wife about just different things I was feeling and thinking. And I guess I thought maybe I would sound crazy, but she was very receptive to it. She and she said that might be the case, and I don't know for sure how or what, but my wife was adamant about one thing. She said on this month of this year, she said, you're going to leave your job. And I'm thinking to myself, like, that's insane. Because why would I do that? I mean, I need to work, right? She was like, well, she said, I know it. And oddly enough, there were corresponding visions that I've had that almost line up with that. So I was like, but even because of the human mind, I fought against it. And then when that moment came where I found myself in that position where I was doing the exact same thing that I said I was going to do because it was crazy, I realized that I don't know, but I know there is a force out there that is guiding every step I take. Because before I take the step, I am told about that step. And what I mean is this. I've had so many vivid dreams and unbelievable situations that just did not make any sense. So I started saying, I'm going to pay close attention to these dreams that I'm having. And right after I left my job, I thought this is the time for me to really focus on me spiritually. And during that time, I did an extensive amount of meditation. I was meditating sometimes twice a day for 5 days. I was just constantly meditating, trying to center myself, balance myself, get more connected with myself, and not self being the physical form, the true self. And when I started to do it, the more and more I started doing it, my visions became so more vivid, and it was happening rapidly back to back. I can recall one. It was so interesting. I can't even. I'm gonna describe the dream I had, but it's just gonna sound so insane. But I was in an office. Which again, like I said, I couldn't understand because I don't have a job at the time, but I'm in an office and I'm surrounded with a bunch of people. And all of a sudden, the only way I can describe them was beings, these unknown beings entered the office and they were going off. I mean, they were beating some of the people up in the office, and the other people, they were lining them all up. And they were hitting everyone that was lining up with this beam. I can't really describe, but it was some type of beam or weapon. It's the only way I can describe it, some form of weapon. And they were using this weapon. And when they hit everyone with this weapon, either they just dropped or something happened. And when they approached me, I thought this was going to be it. And when they hit me with a beam, instead of me dropping like the people I saw standing next to me, a light illuminated from out of my mouth and my eyes, and I woke up. I was freaked out. I was like, what the hell was that? That was intense. It was what I thought. So, I just told that to my wife, and I kept it in the back of my mind. And fast forward, I have another dream that stood out. I was somewhere in some star system on a planet, and this planet was filled with creatures that were, I couldn't even try to make these creatures up in my own head. Like, I couldn't picture them. They weren't of any kind of creature I have ever seen anywhere, even on television. I've never seen these things before. And some of them were flying through the sky. Some of them were crawling through the ground. Some of them looked similar to me, not in the form I am currently, but in another body. But it was me. And it was just a planet full of these different beings. But the world looked familiar, right? It looked very familiar. The ruins, the structures, they look familiar. Like I've seen them once before. But I am not human, and neither most of the things around me. And I felt at home. I felt at peace. And when I woke up from it afterwards, I was telling my wife that that place felt like home. And then I realized that that was home. That was a home that I wasn't originally from. I think that everything starts and everything ends. And when my first day as myself, my origin started on that planet. There's someone I listen to, and he's just an abundance of information. I mean, I think anyone could benefit from just listening to him, because he just has so much information. Some information he got from books, but others are just information he's gotten from the source, right? And the source is the creator, the one above all. That's where he's getting this information from. But he mentioned about spiritual energies, light beings, vibrating at a certain frequency. And if there is a nearing planet that has, let's say this particular planet that this being is on has been destroyed, that spiritual energy, because the planet is no longer there, it can't recycle back on its own planet, that is going to go to the nearest planet that has the same frequency and it reincarnate in this place. And I thought perhaps that's why I am in a place that doesn't feel like home, because my home isn't no longer. And I got that from watching another video, which was quite recently, where he explained a lot of things that was gaps that I didn't understand. This person filled this gap. Now, this wasn't a video that was specifically meant for me. It was just a video that this person was compelled to create. And when they created, they gave me answers. Gave me answers to the star system I originated from. What I really am. And even to the point that they were describing the beings on this planet that fit me perfectly. I mean, absolutely perfectly. Because we think that the way we are is because of different experiences we have, which they do kind of shape some of the parts of us, but they're not the core. They're not the core of who we are. We are who we are based on what we've always been. We've always been this way. So, but that's one of the things I realized. And then after that, I just realized that how important it was to decipher those. And now I'm able to decipher when I am just having a regular dream versus when I'm actually having a memory. And there was one, and this has happened to me recently. I've never done this before, where I would wake up. Before, when I used to sleep, I would mumble. You could never understand what I was saying. I've done that for some time now, but over time it got clearer to the point where you can actually hear what I was speaking when I was sleeping. So much so that it advanced even further to that. Not only am I able to speak in my dream, but now I'm reacting to it. I'm coming up out my sleep. Not even out my sleep. I'm moving up, like I'm dealing with something, whether I'm trying to talk to someone or I'm fighting someone. I'm more being active, and I've never done that before. I recall one dream I had. And this was kind of going back to the dream I had about the is going back to this, the story I was saying about the guy who created the video that talked about the star system and how what race of being I was in that star system. And he has a picture of what these beings could look like. And oddly enough, I had a dream prior to this video, of course. This was probably in 2021, but I was in a crystal building. The walls themselves were crystal, and they were this beautiful purple. And in this room, it was what I can only assume was a helper to what was a royal being, because what she wore was that of someone I would consider to be royalty. I mean, it was this flowing gown I've never seen before, holding a scepter with I don't know, like a collar that kind of spread up across her head, and her face was unlike anything I've ever seen. But me and this person was extremely close because someone had murdered her. And it angered me so much that in the dream I screamed and roared, and the entire building shook. And as that was taking place, I woke up from my sleep, screaming just as loud, terrifying my wife to death. And then I realized that was a memory, a traumatizing memory for me, which is why it jerked me out of my sleep and why I screamed so loud. And I realized that it must have been someone I wasn't able to save, which might have been around the time my planet was destroyed. But I realized that I lived many lives, not just this one. And there's many memories built inside of my spiritual self that can manifest itself when I'm in my unconscious state. But that also goes for any other lives that I've lived when I was on this planet as well. Some of them I think are some of my fears. At least there used to be a lot of those. But then I realized that some of them was just memories. And here's where it really started bugging me. The reason why I'm actually talking about this topic today is I realized that it is always something, a source, that's that energy, the creator energy, that has allowed me the ability to be able to see things before they happen. And I never understand them when they happen. I always realize it after it happens. And there's been a few times where I remember sitting in a room, doing something and realizing I've already done this. And I've done it because I've seen it before. Because I have done it before. And then there's times that I've noticed things that I'm seeing, that I have seen them before they actually transpired. And it's almost unbelievable when you're saying it out loud, but the reality is most of us don't actually know what we really are, what our true purpose is. Most of us who don't believe exactly what I believe, let's say, may believe that when you die, you go to heaven, or if you're bad, you go to hell. Some of us don't believe we go nowhere. You just die, go return to the earth, right? But that's because we refuse to look for the answer, right? We refuse to find out if there is another answer than the answer that we've been given. And some of us just don't bother to look for the answer because we view the state of the world and say, what's the point? That's the point. The point is to learn the answer, to learn the truth, which oddly enough, it seems that humans on this planet, they try to hide the truth, deny the truth, or escape the truth. But the reality is, there is more, so much more to this existence, not just this world, but to the existence. And the fact that humans for decades believed that there is no other life anywhere in the universe but this one planet was quite absurd. I think you'd have to be quite delirious to believe that God, quote unquote, in his infinite wisdom would only create humans and nothing else. Why spin up an entire universe with infinite galaxies and infinite stars? Why create all that if you're only going to put one race of being? That's limiting the one being that just said is more powerful than anything. It is the ruler of all things. It doesn't make any sense, at least not to me. But I don't want to go too far off topic. But then I had another dream. It was an interesting dream. Now, the dream was I was in an old house, very old house. Had to be colonial, maybe like 1920, 1930. And I wasn't alive. I was dead, but I was a ghost, I guess, or spirit, I guess, wandering around, observing the people in this house. And I ended up, before I go, let me take a step back. Before my death, there was another spirit that was wandering, I was aware of. And I saw this spirit, and I guess, I don't know, maybe that was a sign that my death was to come, because oddly enough, after that, I did die. And I wasn't afraid. And it's funny because you have people who die who say that that died and came back. They said it felt warm, it felt nice. And I wasn't afraid, and I didn't feel afraid. And it's interesting because most of this world is based on fear, right? Fear is the ruling emotion, I guess, for this world. Fear is how people continue to work no matter how poorly they're treating. Fear is the reason why people stay in relationships that are harmful to themselves. The fear is the reason why people refuse to take chances, take risks. I mean, fear is everything on this planet. And when I had that dream, it felt so real and it felt peaceful, and I didn't want to come back. But of course, I woke up and I realized that that was just a moment in time, an experience I had prior to this one. And I've had some other dreams that I had one I want to particularly talk about, because my reasoning for making these videos is more of an archive for me to just kind of talk through my experiences as I've changed into something different. And I want to keep a dialogue on my speech and what I'm saying now versus what I'm going to say a few years from now. But if there's anyone, since it's up here on YouTube, that's someone who may stumble upon this, right? Because, right now we're in an age of censorship like you've never seen before. So I don't know if what I say and what I don't say is going to, influence whether this gets out to anyone or not. But if it does, maybe this will help someone. So this is why I'm saying it. But after I finish, it's a dream I had that I want to express, because I do believe it will come. Without a doubt, it will come. And hopefully you'll be prepared. But it was a dream I had about a year ago, maybe a few months ago even. And I couldn't understand the dream at all, because it didn't make any sense. First of all, like I said, I had not been working because I left my job. So, and going back into the workforce wasn't something I was keen on doing, nor that I want to, because I realized that it was toxic for me. It was toxic for my physical body, and it was toxic to my spiritual body. And I realized how toxic it was, of course, through the time that I wasn't in the office. So I had this dream. I was in the office, and for whatever reason, I was just surrounded by nothing but Indian women. And I couldn't understand why. I said, why so many? I would have to be in the country, right? It doesn't make, I can't see why I would do that. And that's because I'm not seeing far enough. I'm not looking wide enough. And I realized that today, oddly enough, what I was seeing my future job. Because oddly enough, unfortunately, in this plane of existence, as it is structured, you need currency in order to navigate, to survive, to provide, to take care of yourself and your family. So I had to go back to work. And unknowingly, I just wasn't paying that much attention to it until it was like an epiphany. That was my dream. That was my spiritual self telling me that this was to come. And even before this, I always knew that I would be in the workforce at some point because of a dream I had years ago. Of course, it didn't make sense to me because I was already working, but oddly enough, the dream was in a time period that it seemed like it was going to be after I wasn't working. So I always knew that I would be back here, which is why I was always prepared for it mentally. It wasn't a shock. I didn't get depressed or upset because I already knew it was coming because it was shown to me once before. And I'm not claiming to be anybody's prophet or of any kind of a fortune teller of any sorts. I'm not any of those things. I'm just telling you what I saw. And I'm not seeing anyone else's, just my own. Because we are all responsible for our own paths, our own choices, and our own decisions. And whether what happens to us is based on the choices and decisions that we make. If we allow someone to determine and tell us what our fates are, then you've decided to let someone else decide your fate. I have not. I've chosen to choose my own. And I will operate within a certain parameter in order to make sure that my family is taken care of, and those things that are given to them are given to them up until the time I'm no longer part of this world. But as far as that's concerned, I saw that first part of me getting back into the workforce, and then years later, I was shown another vision that I would be exposed to this environment. And just today, it was like, hit me, wow, again, I'm